Tell you what, let's just go to Kyle rather than getting gross. How you doing, Kyle?
I'm doing good. How are y'all doing today?
We're fine.
I just thought I'd call in because, you're talking about how, critical thinking isn't taught in the schools anymore. And I actually graduated back in 2005. And just really, there was only one teacher that really kind of taught us critical thinking. And that was, my chemistry class. We were given the whole spiel of, we were given this dangerous molecule, dihydrogen monoxide, and how people drown in it, and that it's
it's in styrofoam cups, and we should ban those because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And she actually put out the results that many people said that we should ban water. And it kind of makes you critically think about these things.
Yeah. That reminds me of the time when, occasionally Leno will go out on the street and with really obvious questions and ask people and find out how dumb they are. Something like, I remember one Tonight Show where he said something like, he was asking people, okay, do you have a cranium? and half the people were just sort of like, I'm not sure. Is that like...
While scratching it.
Is that like in your spleen or something? That's hilarious. The guys on the Man Show, of all offensive television programs ever, which we all love, but they went out and got a bunch of women on the street to sign a petition to against women's suffrage.
Yes.
Yeah. So just not quite knowing suffrage.
Sounds really bad.
Yeah. Suffrage sounds like a bad thing. I certainly don't like the suffrage. So that kind of people just don't.
So how detailed did your chemistry teacher get? I mean, how much benefit did you really get? And was it part of the curriculum or just something that this was a good teacher who decided?
Was it just an example of the way in which people don't know fundamental things?
Yeah, she kind of tied it in to the whole idea in chemistry of the phlogiston theory, all things burn because of phlogiston. She kind of tied it into that, it was a commonly held belief at the time.
Yeah, I just did something really sexist, didn't I? I assumed that his chemistry teacher was a man, and it wasn't.
No, it was actually a woman.
I know. Well, see, that I'm saying I was being sexist without even thinking about it. But that's an important point. Once upon a time, I'd have never noticed. And it's the same thing that I see among other people who
I didn't notice that you just
bigots or racist or sexist or things like that. The thing that you have to do, in addition to my position on caring about whether or not my beliefs are true, is actually think about what you're thinking. Richard Dawkins talking about raising the
consciousness
to women's rights issues and things like that. I do that, and the fact that I caught it right off the bat taught me.
Because all of us are programmed with certain ideas from our cultural upbringing.
Yeah,
and it's a lot of work to get over a bunch of that. I made a similar mistake one time when I was host. I just casually tossed off some comment about I don't know, I think it may have been some evangelist that I found incredibly offensive, and I think I described him as fat and ugly. And we had one of our group members at the time, good friend of mine, really nice guy, but he emailed me after the show, a very nice email, not raking me over the coals or anything, just objecting to my joining of those two adjectives, right? Fat with ugly. And he's like, okay, I'm fat, and here's the thing that fat people have to put up with all the time: this sort of automatic, this cultural assumption that if you gotta be thin as a rail to look good, and so if you're overweight, then there's the assumption of ugliness, and these are ideas that. And I just realized, I just said it. I just said it without thinking about it.
There's no malicious intent. There wasn't any intent a minute ago. We're all a product of our cultures. We all have prejudices, biases. The thing is to try to teach yourself to recognize them when they happen, so that maybe, I don't think we're ever going to completely stop, but maybe you can avoid the future. But I completely interrupted what Kyle was saying. So go back to telling us about your chemistry teacher. Oh,
it's okay. It's y'all show, so. But anyways, just tying into the whole phlogiston theory, scientific method, testing, what is put out there. Can things be falsified? Can you at least test it? And, that's kind of one of the things that, that's kind of stuck with me and kind of, stopped me from buying into a lot of the fads that are put out in front of people. Like, just name the fad that's been put out in front of, people my age, 21. And I've pretty much avoided, all the people wanting to go to, listen to rap music. Like, they're like, oh, everybody likes it, so you got to like it. I'm like, no, I honestly don't like it. I can't understand a single word they're saying in their lyrics. I mean, the beat's catchy, but that's about it, and that's called techno. So I just listen to techno, I guess.
There you go. Yeah. Well, I'll give you a good example of one that a lot of people have, and this again dovetails back with the TAM report. One of the things that was shown at TAM was the pilot episode of a program called The Skeptologists, which Michael Shermer and Phil Plait and Steve Novella and all these guys have gotten involved in. Yes. And they are they're pitching this right now to them, so it's not on, but it's they've shot a pilot, and so they're now pitching the program to and it's just again skeptical investigation of claims, right? And so there was one, I think, haunted house investigation, and the other thing that they checked up on was wheatgrass juice. This is a big health food fad, wheatgrass juice, and the Whole Foods crowd, just goes nuts over this, and the claims are that it's a superfood, that it's just packed full of all these nutrients, and it also contains chlorophyll, which is really, plants use chlorophyll, and it's good for plants, so, we get some of that in us, and, it's good for us. And, of course, they went and, to a health food store and tested some of this stuff, and it was kind of funny there. But then they had the group of them around trying it out, and Steve Novella, who is the doctor, essentially says, okay, well, it's not a superfood. It's actually a very poor food, poor in nutrients. It has almost no beta-carotene. It has almost none, very little. You do much better just going and buying apples and oranges and fruits and vegetables just for your essential vitamin content. But this wheatgrass, it's a very poor food in terms of the nutrients. That's why cows have to eat so much. Because you don't really get that much benefit out of it. And as for the chlorophyll content, well, we're not plants, So the chlorophyll just sort of, it gets in our body and it disperses. But what the claim of the health food store owner was when he was letting them sample all this stuff was that the body, he said, it converts the chlorophyll to hemoglobin, which is, this thing in our body. And it's like, that's the stupidest thing ever. I mean, you could drink an actual cup of blood with hemoglobin in it, and the body would not absorb that and process that as new hemoglobin. But the chlorophyll itself, it just dissipates when it gets into our system. You just pee it right out. So ultimately, it's just, again, it's a fad. It has a whole bunch of pseudoscientific claims attached to it. And you go to Whole Foods, they'll sell you a shot for $2.50, and that's really what it's all about. So, these.
And it tastes like grass.
Yeah.
And I haven't wanted to chew grass since I was a little kid.
Yeah. Well, Phil Plait said on the show, he's like, I would rather lick a squirrel's armpit than drink another cup of this stuff. It's that apparently nasty. I've never had it, but I've had friends who are just nuts over it, and I could just look at it and tell, I don't want to drink anything that green. It just seemed weird to me. So you're right, but, because people aren't armed with the facts beforehand, then they'll just accept what they hear, if what they hear sort of, I think, satisfies or flatters a preconceived idea that they might have.
I think one of the best things is that you're 3 years out of high school now?
I'm 21, probably about 3 years, yeah.
Yeah. And yet, I don't know how many of your other teachers you remember in detail, but you remember this one teacher who actually took the time to perhaps teach something that you benefit from on a daily basis that wasn't part of the curriculum.
Yeah, and but the best part of all is a chemistry class. Why wasn't I learning this in English or most of all physics or any other class?
Why did you learn it in kindergarten?
Yeah.
No way. I mean, I agree there. All they taught us in kindergarten was to share, and even though you've had that toy and everything, it's time for you to give it up for someone else. But one other thing, for anybody who wants to think skeptical about a lot of stuff. I mean, just to see how a lot of these fads are brought into being and everything, I recommend a book by Edward Bernays called Propaganda, and it gets into how you manipulate mass psychology and everything, and how a lot of these fads or a lot of ideas that are accepted as conventional wisdom are brought into being. It's very important. I think it fits everything that I've ever seen.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks.
Thanks a lot, Kyle. Appreciate the call.
Yeah, appreciate it very much. Stay in touch.